Welcome to the video tutorial on using Inject with Notifier 2. This is a great effect. So what this allows you to do, the spectator can type in a search term into Google. So that could be the name of their first girlfriend, their favorite movie, their favorite holiday destination, virtually anything that you're trying to obtain from that spectator. When they enter that search term in and they press on search, it's instantly sent to the Notifier app. The Notifier app then sends it on to Notifier, and in fact, Notifier can send it onto other third-party integrations. The purposes of this explanation would really focus on the Notifier integration. So let's go demonstrate that, and then we'll get into the details on how to configure and the various options. So I'm in Inject at the moment. I'm going to type in a search term. I'm going to type in Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I haven't pressed search yet. So when I tap on Arnold Schwarzenegger, Inject will forward me to the real Google, and it will also forward the information to the Notifier app and also forward it to Notifier. So let's have a look at that. I tap on Arnold Schwarzenegger, then sent to the Notifier app status screen, onto the Apple Watch, and onto Notifier. So you'll notice at the search term that Notifier has been smart enough to say Schwarzenegger is a very long word. Because it's such a long word, it shrinks the text to try and fit all the information in here. You can see that will actually say, I get that right to camera, it'll say Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now let's go back and we'll search for something a little bit smaller. So going back onto Inject's Google site. Now I'm going to search for something much smaller. Let's search for Tom Hanks. So now when I tap on search, so we've located Tom Hanks. Now the font size is larger because it can fit Tom on one line and Hanks on the second line. Now if I press a key on here, that will acknowledge that message. You can choose to operate Notifier either in a automated mode or in a manual mode where you press the messages. So if you've got Notifier sitting inside your top pocket, you may want this running in automated mode, so it will scroll through each message. So you give a message a lifetime, and then once that lifetime expires, it will auto-delete. So let's just go into a couple of those as examples. So if I go into my settings menu, I go to Devices, Notifier, go to Settings. So at the moment, my message lifetime is disabled. So that means when I type in a search term here, if I typed in Tom Hanks, that will display on the screen forever until a button is pressed. But now I'm just going to set that to say 10 seconds. So now if I go here, so now I'm going to type in a favorite holiday destination. In my case, the Maldives. So now it's going to search for the Maldives, and then it forwards that information straight to the Notifier. But that's set for a 10-second timer. So in about 5 more seconds, it disappears. And now we're ready for our next search term. Great. So now I'm going to search for another term. So in this case, I'm going to type in, say, Australia. Pops up. You'll see that Notifier 2 is vibrating to indicate that it's got a message. We can control that. So let's go into how we configure the integration between the Notifier app and Inject. So if I go into settings, under integrations, and then go into Inject settings. At the moment, I've got Inject enabled. That means that the Notifier app is going out to the Inject servers saying, here's my user ID, 2863. Are there any new messages for me? And it's doing that every 5 seconds. That's probably good practice to turn this feature off when you're not using Inject and turn it on when you're going to perform. So we don't want to overload the Inject servers by making these requests, part 1. And part 2, if someone locates your 4-digit Inject ID, you don't want to get messages coming through unnecessarily during a performance. The account ID, you'll be given a 4-digit account ID. That's the same. If you go into Inject, you can have a look at that 4-digit code is. We have an option to vibrate the iPhone on Inject. So that means once the spectator has entered a search term and they've pressed on search, at that point, your iPhone will vibrate so you know that they've initiated the message. Now, likewise, you can vibrate our thumper or vibrate Notifier to get the message as well. Now, what I've also done with this configuration, if I go down to devices, Notifier and settings, I've also selected that I want message displayed with a white text, a cyan background. It just aesthetically looks the nicest, but you can change that for whatever color configuration that you want. Another feature that I've done here is I said don't interrupt messages. So if I get an Inject message and that Inject message is being displayed on the Notifier and then a spectator rolls a dice, this means do not display the dice number, keep displaying the Inject message. If I said interrupt messages, what would happen? Someone then had the Inject search term that's been displayed on Notifier, and then they roll the dice, then that dice roll would be reported to Notifier, and when you press a button, it would go back to that Inject message. And that concludes the quick introduction to how to use Inject with Notifier 2. Thank you.